Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Coulter. I'm the Vice President of the South Australian branch of Sustainable Population Australia. 1930, that was a vintage year. It was a vintage year because it was the year in which I was born. But I don't mention it for that reason. I mention it because the global population in 1930 was 1/3 of what it is today, less than 1/3. It was about 2 billion people. The population of Australia in 1930 was about 7 million, roughly 1/3 of the population that we have today. So I ask you just to consider, if all other things were equal, in other words, everybody consuming at the rate at which they were consuming today across the whole world, if we had a global population of only 2 billion people, how much easier the problem of sustainability would be for us to solve. How much easier it would be for us to allow those in less developed countries to have a larger slice of the non-renewable resources in particular, which we in the developed world are using so voraciously. And I ask you also to think that within the lifetime of the children of many of you, the population of the world will grow by a larger amount than the total population in 1930. So we do indeed have a very serious problem in relation to population. One of the slides that I put up there illustrates the point that one additional Australian consumes as much as 80 more Bangladeshis or 330 people in Ethiopia. And I ask you to think about that in terms of what our government is wanting to do, increasing the number of Australians. What is so special about us that Mike Rann wants 500,000 people more in South Australia, which is equivalent at 80 times the rate to 40 million more Bangladeshis or 165 million more people in Ethiopia. We're the ones who need to control our population. I just want to say that Sustainable Population Australia came into existence in 1988 because it's an organisation committed to sustainability, and hence the reason for this talk tonight, Ian Lowe. But what we saw was that most of the conservation bodies around Australia were addressing only half the equation. They were addressing in some form or other the issue of per capita impact. And I ask you again to think that population is the multiplier of per capita impact. If we go back to 1930 again, the per capita demand on the environment in Australia then was about 1/4 of what it is now. So it's increased by a factor of 12 in terms of both population and per capita demand. So Sustainable Population Australia concentrates on the population part of that equation. Sustainable Population Australia has a website, and you've seen that advertised here tonight. I ask you to look at that. We have a quarterly newsletter, and we also invite you to join with us and become a member of SPA. And I have on the table here some membership forms, but if you want to, you can go to the website and download one of those forms. Now at this stage, it's usual to say something like, Ian Lowe needs no introduction to this audience, and then proceed to introduce him. So I'm not going to do that, but I want to say something about Ian Lowe which I think is terribly important in the context of population and in the context of sustainability generally. And that is that over the last several decades, and not just in Australia, and not just under a Liberal government, but it started under a Labor government, and it's present particularly in the United States and the United Kingdom, that academics and scientists have come under very strong pressure to toe the party line in a whole host of ways. Reports have been doctored, changed, people have been denied promotion, others have in fact had to leave jobs because they have found that they were in a dead-end situation. But there have been a few academics who have stood out against this trend, and Ian Lowe is one of those people. Ian Lowe is one of those competent, well-informed scientists, comprehensively engaged with the whole width of the issue of sustainability, who has fearlessly spoken out on this issue for a long time now. He's one for whom the views that he's expressed have actually cost him something, so his views are worth taking note of. So, without further ado, I invite you, Ian, to address this meeting tonight. Thank you very much for coming.